All right, Mr. Matty Bambrick is joining me for a conversation this week. Matty, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for the offer.
No worries, man. No worries for people that have been listening to this. I know Matt from coaching in California. We didn't coach at the same club, but we coached at a club right next to each other and kind of made a friendship and had a lot of other friends out there. So we know each other personally pretty well, and we just got to catch up for the last 15-20 minutes, which was pretty good. So yeah, it's good to talk to you again, man. I mean that. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
No, you too.
It's been a while.
It's been too long.
Yeah, it has been. Right, to get us rolling, man. You are a Villa fan, and I've been very, very impressed with how they've been this season. So I want to kind of get your kind of thoughts and your views on it from the Villa side of things. But to start with, like, how did you? Because I've never had this conversation with you. How did you fall in love with footy, and then especially Villa? Like, what's the story there?
It's pretty much ingrained into me from like family and friends and stuff. In terms of football, my brother Richard's 5 years older than me, so as soon as I could sort of hold my own body weight up, I was thrown into the goal in the back garden, and even our mate Sean pelting the ball at us and just playing through that. And you just grow up with it. You don't know anything else. Like, sport was everything in our house. We were leaving the house on a Sunday morning with Mum to take me to football, or a Saturday morning to take me to football at like 8 in the morning, finish at 12, and then it's football on all through the day on Saturday, and then Sunday. When I was a bit older, 7 or 8 years old, and I started playing for teams, sort of we'd leave the house at 7 in the morning, get back out and fair play to Mum, like in the harshest of cold and wet and rain and frost, she stands out there watching terrible standard of football with me, like just headless chickens running around, and then come back, get me washed and changed, and we were back out and doing it again for my brother, playing elsewhere. The standard of football in his team was massively different. They were a good team in sort of the latter years, but everything we did was just ingrained in football.
That's fitting.
Pretty much, and like even going to school, sort of when you got to that 7 and 8 year old age again, it was, I want to go to school early because then you can play every break time. Like, I remember getting into the lunch hall at lunchtime, stuffing my sandwiches, throwing everything away and getting out to go and play again. Like, just no interest in anything else, just wanting to play football. Then the back garden after school, or going around my mate Sean's again. He'd come back from high school and smash a ball around. It was just everything we did was football constantly. It was a dreamland.
Love that.
But then into Villa stuff again, just from my brother, and then we were quite successful, sort of 95, 96 under Brian Little. A couple of Coca-Cola Cups. Not that I can remember them, I just remember like the experience and the feeling around it. And then I think my mum took us to our first game. It was Atletico Madrid in the UEFA Cup back in the day. Remember absolutely none. Oh, huge game. Stan Collins. I think we lost the first leg, or it was the first leg there, but we had to go out, and obviously massive performance from what I remember. Stan Collymore scored a screamer, but again, I was probably at the age where it was a bit too early for me because I don't really remember any of the game. The first game I really remember was Charlton Athletic at Villa Park. Danny Mills scored an absolute screamer of a free kick. It just got touched off to him and he flew it in the back of the net, which then my brother and Sean then tried to replicate for the next 3 or 4 weeks. So that was always a joy to behold, getting a ball fizzed at you by your friends and family. But everything again we did, I remember I got to about 10, it was just Villa everything, wallpaper, bed clothes, everything was Villa. You get 2 kits every birthday. It was everything we did, and living so close to the stadium, we had ample time to go.
Class.
And then season tickets and all the rest of it, all the way through.
Yeah, that's class. Like, that's one thing I've been unfortunate in, that the team I support is so far away, right? I didn't grow up, in the area from the team I support. So far away. I've been down to Anfield a couple of times, but not as many as I would love to go. So the fact that you've grown up there and got to go to all those games, I'm jealous. That's that's absolutely brilliant, and especially Prem games and big players and that's absolute class. So Danny Mills, man, he was decent.
He had a spell like he started in at Charlton and he went to Leeds, didn't he? And he did well at
Yeah,
Leeds. And
yeah,
I think he went on to Man City then. But
he did.
honestly, if you look it up, I posted about it. Like I did one of my first blog posts was about sort of my background, and I managed to find a GIF of it. It was an absolute thunderbolt, man. Unreal.
Brilliant, man. He does a lot of stuff on Sky Sports News and that now.
I've seen.
He's quite good. He's actually all right on it. I listened to him. He talks a lot about football, but yeah, he's one of those classic English players from, like you say, the kind of late 90s, early 2000s of that kind of era. He was a solid player. I liked him. Him a lot.
He was decent.
What so I mean, let's just get into it. Like Villa, let's talk about it now. Like Villa this season have been nothing short of spectacular. I mean, for you supporting them your whole life, seeing how well they're doing this season, like must be like amazing. I mean, it must be so much fun this season watching them.
In terms of the teams that I've watched in my time, we had a very good period under Martin O'Neill when we first got taken over by Randy Lerner, the billionaire. And that was a really good period. We had some good players, Gareth Barry, Ashley Young, John Carew, Petrov. That was a really good team, and that's a fight. And we had a certain way of winning. In terms of the quality of the football, this surpasses it. The team that finished 6-3 times, I think, for the quality of football we've played so far, little bit of a dip at the moment, but unbelievable. I've never seen a Villa team be this entertaining this often with the ball. It's been in dark times. It's been a joy to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely giving a bit of joy in these times, eh?
Oh, huge. Even like I got slated for like celebrating and staying up against West Ham, but it was one of them. We always chatted as a group if we could manage to stay up like we did, and it was very difficult to stay up given certain contexts and circumstances. Then the next summer and the next season, me and my friends at home were very, very hopeful because we've got two very, very invested and wealthy owners.
Oh yeah.
And then Dean Smith as a manager is, from what I've seen, I listened to a lecture he did at Birmingham City University, and just his manner in general. Very, very forward-thinking coach, and probably goes under the radar more than what he should do. But the quality of the football since he's come in has been brilliant.
You're spot on. I think he definitely goes under the radar, and it's that classic, like, because he's English thing. You kind of just associate it with that, like, well, all right, well, there's a weird thing with England, and Scotland too, by the way, but, well, probably the whole of Britain. There's a thought process of, for whatever reason, we're not as tactically good as Spain or Germany or whatever. And in some cases you can say, all right, it's true. But at the same time, you know, great example of the season, Dean Smith has been proven that wrong. It's been fantastic.
Oh, huge Chris Wilder the year before as well. And there's again, I think there's an underestimation. Even if you go back as far as that Leicester team that won the league, if you look at the 10, 12 games in the end of the season before, the job Nigel Pearson and now Craig Shakespeare did, who's now at Villa, the momentum for that title run came from the season before. They stuttered a bit at the start, but if you look back at it properly, like there's some really good English coaches out there that just don't get, because they haven't got an O at the end of the name, or they sit on a bucket, they don't get the plaudits that they probably warrant. But again, just reading around Dean Smith, I'm particularly interested in Brentford, like I'm sure most modern football people are.
Yes,
listening to him talk about Matthew Benham and things like that, it's and even recently in one of his latest interviews, he was saying he grew up playing chess and he was a West Midlands chess champion, so that might give him a bit of a background into a bit of tactical nous, but it's been good.
You like Villa this season have been, and to be fair, to make your point, last season when you played that game on the last day of the season, I wanted you to stay up because I actually quite liked I liked you last season too. Like I liked the team. I enjoyed watching them. I thought you had some really good players. You know, your Grealishes and that who we'll get onto, but like. And I always thought the way that Dean Smith spoke was just fantastic. What What? So who have you signed? Who did you sign this summer to add to the squad that you already had? Because obviously the growth has been so quick in a crazy season, but the growth has been huge. Like who have you bought this summer that added to it?
So I think we bought Emi Martinez from Arsenal, who was
Huge.
a monstrous step up. With no disrespect, not to sound out players for not being at the level, but we had a couple of keepers, and we were unfortunate with Tom Heaton doing his ACL
Yeah.
New Year's Day at Burnley last New Year's Day. That was a killer. We ended up getting Pepe Reina in on loan eventually, but
Bit
just
past it.
even with Pepe coming in, there's a little bit of inconsistency there. But Emi Martinez has been huge. I think the one that's starting to get the plaudits that absolutely deserves it is Matty Cash.
Yep.
I think even watching the Leicester game yesterday, I think the one thing we missed, and I think Dean Smith brought it up in his interview after the game, is that El Mohammadi shouldn't have got involved in something, and a couple bits and pieces. But from watching the game, I can tell there's a level of intensity missing that Matty Cash brings, but there's also a bit of a disruption in that back five that had been there, just knowing where they're going to be, knowing how they're playing. But then the threat down the right was completely gone, which when you're dealing with Harvey Barnes, the further you can push him back into his own half, you minimise the danger, essentially. But with all due respect to El Mohammadi, he's no Matty Cash. I mean, Matty Cash massively under the radar for 16 million, which we were all a little bit thing about when he first came in, because as a fan, I loved watching Freddie Gilbert. I thought he was quality.
Mm-hmm.
But then I can't knock the decision to drop him out, and Gilbert's now on loan at Strasbourg and doing okay back in that league. But Matty Cash, unbelievable.
I told you I started my fate manager game on Villa, and in pre-season, Matty Cash got injured for 4 months, and Ollie Watkins is out for 8 weeks. So I'm scraping the barrel to get some signings, and I've got 2.5 million to spend. I don't know what to do. But that Matty Cash is Matthew likes him. Matthew really likes Matty Cash. He's been a fan of him for a while. That's a great shout. But the signing of Martinez is in the last part of the season at Arsenal. I thought he was phenomenal. And then I saw they'd let him go to you, and I was like, what are they doing? Like, and if you look at where you're at and where Arsenal are at, that taking him from them has been a huge jump. In my opinion, if I was to pick, I still think at the end of the season, unless it goes tits up, if I was to pick a team of the season, he'd be the keeper by a mile.
Oh, huge. Like, again, I think just as a team, we've dropped off a couple of, in a few of the games recently. It's hard to put your finger on it. We had obviously the COVID lockdown and stuff, but all the way through it, again, we spoke about Dean Smith and his mentality. The mentality of Martinez as he's come in, sort of the one bonus of not having fans in there is you can hear what's going on.
Yeah.
The two voices that are very, very prominent with Villa are Martinez and Tyrone Mings. Martinez just in organising, picking the ball out of the air when you just need your keeper to step up when you're under the cosh a little bit. Like as a defender, if you know he's coming and you know he's going to get it, the relief in dying moments of games where we've had a lot of clean sheets this season. I think we've had 12. There's a couple of 1-0ers in there. There's a couple of tight games, but having that was what we were missing in the previous teams, just having that sturdy, solid keeper to go and keep everyone in, keep everyone organised. But then the quality with his feet, like if you watch him on a drop kick, his technique is outrageous. I've never seen anyone play a ball like that before. Maybe Scott Carson, again, a bit of Villa bias because I got to watch him. He had a ridiculous quality with his goal kicking, but Martinez on the ball, really, really good. He's just settling, having someone behind you that is that good, so settling.
Massively, man. He's been worth every single penny and more. I mean, I think did you pay 20 for him maybe?
Yeah, and I think it's about 20 million. And I think people were scoffing at it while you're buying Arsenal's second keeper. Like Bernd Leno was bought in for Arsenal. Obviously, he was going to be their number one. Now, I think the question at the end of the season is, why did Arsenal let him go in standard Arsenal fan TV fashion? But how did you let him go for so cheap as well?
Yeah.
He's been quality.
He has been, man. He's been solid. you can tell by looking at him too, like you mentioned it, like you can tell he's quite an ambitious person. He's he's a competitor. He wants to do well. He wants to improve. And again, credit to Dean Smith, because he obviously wants that mentality in his side, which is class. You mentioned the Leicester game the other day, actually. And you know what? I said to Matthew, even when you got beat, the final whistle, the way Leicester celebrated and the way that yous looked very disappointed you got beat by the team that is currently going up and down between second and third, and they looked like they were buzzing to beat you. And I was like, that shows you how far this team's come in a season, because Leicester were so happy to have got that win. It was huge.
No, definitely. I think, again, the one word that comes up a lot is the mentality of the team, and especially this season, there's an intensity, like I mentioned with Matty Cash mission against Leicester. There was a definite dip in the intensity. But again, the Leicester game, and to be honest, similar with the Man United game at Old Trafford, I watched the Man United players at the final whistle when we had a slow start to the game, got back into it, and for the majority of the match, I think we were really leaning into them, like good quality football, and it showed. I think if you go looking at the amount of fouls that are committed against Villa players, and if you watch the game again, the cynicism in some of the tackles, just some of the naughtiness and having to side us down and catching us on the break, and then their celebrations at the end. I think it's a massive statement for where we're going as a club, where the team is at the moment as well.
Huge.
And again, it's there's underlying causes to a little bit of the blip in the form at the moment, but in general, again, whether we finish 6th or 13th, where I think we might have, I was hoping for us to go and finish like being that mid-table to the best of the rest of the other 14 at the start of the season. I still think is a really good season. And just going back onto the signings as well, I know I get hammered by some of my friends and things about, look at all the money you've spent, you should be doing this well.
Right.
But if you go back to the Fulham loss in the playoff final a few years ago, you look at the players that we lost there. We lost John Terry, obviously retired. Robert Snodgrass left, and there's a lot of holes in the defence and things like that. Then Steve Bruce carried on for the next season. We brought in 5 players, 6 players on loan. But then at the start of that season, we probably had 5 or 6 as well that are coming to the end of their contracts. So we were pretty much playing a team where I think John McGinn was our own player. I think Neil Taylor was playing, who was our own player, and Jack Grealish was our own player. Then you had Tammy Abraham, who scored the goals, and a few other players in there. El Ghazi at the time was still on loan. Tuan Zebo was on loan from Man United. And I think the job that Dean Smith did, I noted it down, just preparing a little bit. We were 16th and 8 points behind Leeds and 6 points behind West Brom and a couple other teams. And I think we went from picking up 1.2 points on average a game to 1.8. And then general context again, throughout that period from when Dean Smith took over in October, Grealish missed 14 games of that as well.
Wow. So
it wasn't just the fact that he came in and got us up. There was a lot of extenuating circumstances into why it was such an important thing and a momentous thing for him to go and do for that team. That wasn't his. He brought in 2 or 3 players in January and got us up on that 10-game unbeaten run. But then, as I said, if you look at the players we bought then for that Premier League season, we had to replace quite a lot of those players. Ming signed permanently, Hawes signed permanently, El Ghazi signed permanently. But then you had to find a replacement for Tuan Zebe. You had to find a replacement for Tammy Abraham, which, again, when you go up for a playoff, as the common thing is, you don't have time to plan. No. So again, we had to go and we stretched into some of the lower leagues or some of the other teams in Europe and trying to find a couple bargains there. I think we got an absolute worldie of a deal with Douglas Luiz from Man City and his visa issue, being able to promise him football as well and getting him in. I think he's been, from the lockdown up until now, I think Douglas Luiz has been probably the most improved player I've seen in the Premier League.
He provides you balance in the middle for sure, provides you that balance.
No, definitely. And again, listening to Dean speak lately, is that when he first came in, his English was very poor. Like, there's just the human factors. I don't think football fans give enough time to these people. were really affecting the on-field stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the point of sort of the bringing up not just this season, this summer, where we've spent well, and obviously Ollie Watkins goes into there. It's ridiculous that we haven't brought up Ollie Watkins. But the season before, I look at Matty Targett as well yesterday. Matty Targett was phenomenal. If you look at his touch in the build-up to the goal, but then his general performances in the last 10, 12 games, just a different level altogether, even from the season before. I think it's a combination of the players coming through that we bought in the summer for that instant hit, but then the players we bought previously have really started to get to know the league and understand the league. Again, I think from the team that was set up to go and play in the Premier League, Tom Heaton obviously had the most experience. And then Grealish played a few games at 19. And then you sort of only got a smattering of players that had played a lot of Premier League football.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on that the coaching staff had to go and deal with. It wasn't just the fact of we bought ready-made players for all that money. If you think about an average Premier League player now, you're looking at 18 to 25 million, whereas we were buying 10 million, 11 million. It was a very, very a different situation that we had to deal with compared to, again, the success of Sheffield United. Most of those players come through League One, Championship and in the Premier League.
Yeah,
just listening to you boys talk to it the other day, it's just like they just haven't probably taken that next step and evolved on as much as what they needed to. But
they've struggled this season, but this is why I like having like people on that support other teams too, because all that you just said there, like I kind of knew a couple of things, but you know, when you take it into the context of you know where you've been and all those things that you have to deal with being on the inside, it makes it even more impressive. Whereas regular people will be like, oh, look at who they bought, they've done really well, and it's like, well, there was a lot of things that they had to deal with and lead up to that. So it just makes you understand it more and kind of feel like they deserve even more credit than they're getting. You know what I mean?
No, huge, and I think this is just again probably a lot of Villa bias in this, but there's obviously a lot of stuff on Bielsa and the impact he's had at Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
My argument with that is that compared to the job Dean Smith's done, is that he had a pre-season less to go and get them up. He didn't have some pre-season, so he got a team up that wasn't really his team.
Yeah.
Then he's kept them in the Premier League, and now we've stepped on. I know there's a lot of hubbub and stuff around our Leeds can finish in Europe and stuff, and look at the job he's doing. He also still had 2 full seasons with that team now, similar to what Chris Walker had. And my argument would be, I'm not knocking Leeds in terms of they do play really good football. It's like watching Newcastle back in the 90s when they're exciting to watch. But I think, again, that under the radar, I think whether he likes it or not, I think the job Dean Smith and the owners and Christian Purslow have done doesn't get the recognition it ought to, considering, again, that wider context into where the club was. Like, we weren't paying a tax bill. We were nearly wound up with the former owner. So, like, to go from the brink of non-existence to go full Accrington Stanley, for the want of a better example, to where we are now, unbelievable.
That's class, man. That's that's really good. And like I say, I've enjoyed Dean Smith. What I've chatted about this with all my mates over here too, because this is quite an interesting thing, and I don't know if you've read things on social media about it, or you know from just being a Villa fan. But like, what part? The better way to put it, I guess, would be, I feel like you guys have been really hard to beat while also at the same time, when you attack, being good to watch, right? So, and this is my argument a lot of the time, and I know you need to have the players, but I think you can still be hard to beat, but still be good you know what I mean? Still be good attacking. So on the defensive side of things, like, what role do you think John Terry's played in that? Because, you know, probably the greatest or one of the greatest centre-backs to have played the game in general, never mind just in the Prem. He was phenomenal. So, yeah, I'm just wondering if you think he's had a big role in that.
Huge. I think his impact on the club was, even before he came in as an assistant coach, I think we had quite a poisonous atmosphere around the club when he came in. We were struggling at the time. And I think he's one person in particular that's really helped mould who Jack Grealish is at the moment. I'm sure we'll speak about Jack later, but
Aye, we'll get
as
on
a
to it.
person, I think John Terry, as he's coming to the coach, 100%. Like you win Champions League, you captain your country, you captain Chelsea, you win the Premier League, you work with great coaches, you pick up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
The man's made to be successful, for want of a better phrase, and he's definitely had an impact on it. And I was listening to you boys talk about Frank Lampard, and obviously I agree with you guys that it's probably a bit unfortunate to get the chop, considering what might have happened above him, and did the players come in? Are they necessarily his players because of everything else going on? But I think in terms of John Terry, what he's doing and how he's doing it is the perfect apprenticeship under Dean Smith and Richard O'Kelly, and now with Craig Shakespeare as well.
Yeah.
They're all sort of down-to-earth characters. They've come up through the leagues, through doing the academy stuff at Warsaw and things like that. And I think working with them has been nearly a perfect partnership for him. A really good way to go and learn and get down to the bare brass of it and work his way up. But definitely, and just back to that Frank Lampard point, I sort of lost myself there, is that you were chatting the other day and it was a case of a good coach is one that impacts the team, or you can see that an intervention's been made and it's impactful on the field. And I think during that lockdown break, I think as much as it probably goes against Dean Smith's ideology a little bit about who he is and how he likes his teams to play. Like his Brentford teams are always so good going forward. Like Ryan Woods used to tear us to pieces. If you ask most people who Ryan Wood is, you wouldn't have a clue. But then I think with John Terry and the break and understanding what the pitfalls were during the lockdown and getting at the players and working on what they needed to work on, I think there's been a huge difference. And again, them working together and accepting that we might have to forego a little bit of that all-out attacking play, that gung-ho-ness that we saw at the start of the season. Like, we were very unfortunate to not get anything at Spurs, at Arsenal, Crystal Palace. There were 5 or 6 games in the first 3 months where we played some really good open football. We played Burnley at home and didn't get the 3 points. And it was very outgoing, attacking football, which is great. And if you get the wins, especially, that confidence broods and it builds momentum.
Of course.
Then it wasn't going that way. And I think the change the coaching staff made during the lockdown and what they attempted to do and how it came off was so clear. Even from the first half, ghost goal aside against Sheffield United, the distance between the lines, how compact and how tight we were and how difficult we became to play against is a huge testament to the players. But again, for the coaching staff to see it, to be able to work on it and then to impact it on the field is massive.
Huge, man. Do you I mean, might be too early to ask, and I know he was getting linked to the Bournemouth job, but do you see Terry probably stepping in to be a manager, a coach, first team?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think even Dean Smith mentioned it himself when he was asked about John Terry and where he was, and apparently he was being interviewed for the Bournemouth job, and then 3 or 4 hours later he wasn't getting interviewed for the Bournemouth job. I think he knows himself, when and if the right opportunity comes, they've got to come to the club first because he's a club employee. But he knows there's a time on this, that he knows there's a massive value to having John Terry.
Of course.
So I don't think we're not going to let him go easy, but we know we're going to let him go. There's an inevitability about it. And again, like I said at the start of the question, or the start of the answer to the question, I really admire him stepping into, maybe not stepping straight into the limelight and going and using his name and taking that first manager's job with very little coaching experience. I think it's a bit of a common theme. Like, you look at Brendan Rodgers, who's at you boys, and he did really well there with that Liverpool team. Great to watch, but again, did his due diligence in the youth academies and from smaller clubs and worked his way up. Graham Potter, Steve Cooper now at Swansea. I think there's a definite trend to some of the younger coaches of how they're starting, and I think it's easier for an ex-pro to get through the door. So I admire so much more that John Terry's not taken that, I'll use my name and I'll get through the door and it'll get me going and I'll learn the job from there. I'll learn the job and then I'll get through the door as a first team manager.
I
it's
agree.
not an easy one to do. And I know, again, it's varying degrees of success. Stevie G's gone straight into Rangers and done fantastic. And I think the lesson there, there's no one path.
Yeah, there's not. Some people are just, you even look at Pep, right? Went from the Barca B and took on a massive job in Barca, and look what he did. You can say what you want, that he had the players and all that talk that goes on, but some people, it's like any role in life. Some people can step straight into the biggest limelight and do well, and others don't, and they need the time. So I think that
definitely,
what you said there about like Dean Smith and bringing him on board and everything. I think that helps, because I think Terry will have respect for him too, right? And he'll want to learn off him, and Dean Smith will be fair to him, and it just works all around for everyone. It really does, man. You've got a good setup there. It's a good setup.
Yeah.
And do you before we move on to Grealish and finish off the Villa chat, like, saying it's a good setup, do you feel that how well you're doing is a bit of a, I'm going to use the word fluke. Like, do you feel like it's a fluke because of the season, or do you genuinely feel like, okay, I can see Villa over the next, 2-3 years, challenging at the level that they're doing now?
I think the start of the season really started off. It was crazy, the amount of goals. I think having a reduced pre-season, some of the bigger teams having an extended season with the Champions League obviously set the stage for teams like Southampton, Villa, West Ham to potentially have more of a go at what's going on. The compactness, the shortness of the season helps in there. And then obviously good fortune sort of thing as well comes into it in terms of it being a fluke. Again, I honestly don't think so. I think from the first moments that the new owners came in, Christian Perslow came in, Dean Smith came in, I think there's been a strategy put in place, and it's just a ruthless execution of that strategy all the way through. I think it's happened a little bit quicker than anticipated in some aspects, especially the promotion.
Yeah.
But I think this is just a real starting point. Again, there's been a huge mentality shift at the club, and I know I keep going back into the past of what it was like, but the previous 10 years to go to Villa Park and watch a Villa team play was, number one, quite painful at times. It was sort of turning when we had Gerard Houllier, but when the football's really painful, Villa Park's probably one of the hardest places to go and play, because you get about 15 minutes into the game, and I've been there myself, and through youthful enthusiasm have been part of the problem as well. We were so quick to get on the back of the players, but then just the quality of the players weren't there. It was a very, very poisonous place to be. You got the Jolyon Lescott thing with the accidental photo. But then the mentality shift that we've had has been, it's very much transformational leadership from top to bottom, the way staff have been treated, even from my small time being there in the foundation and at the soccer schools, the way the staff were let go when we got relegated, the way things were dealt with under, I think it was Tom Fox at the time, the CEO. It was a cold, not a very nice place to be. In terms of a fluke for this season, again, I just don't see it. I think, number one, the financial pedigree and the financial desire is there to go and spend if we need to spend.
Interesting.
But then, sorry, mate, let me just...
No, go ahead, mate. Turn off,
the aircon's a nightmare here.
No worries.
So, like, Laura's got to deal with it all the time, bless her, from jumping on one Zoom to the other.
Oh, good, mate. I remember having to deal with the aircon.
Yeah. Is it quite loud in your ear? Can you hear it?
No, you're good. It's gone off now. It popped up there for a second, and now it's good. So you're good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we're like the owners coming in. I think I looked at the league table someone put together, whether it's Forbes or something like that. Outside of Man City, they're, as an accumulation of wealth, they're huge.
Right.
Suarez and Wes Edens. And then one real good comparison to look at is Wes Edens owns the Milwaukee Bucks, the basketball team out here.
Right.
Dealing with a very similar club. There's a couple of really good young players in there. They've managed to keep their top talent in Giannis. I can't spell his last name, so I'm not going to embarrass myself.
Don't even try.
But there's a thought process there. There's a strategy there. And again, I think this is going to be a long-term thing of a desire to get Villa back to the club that I think a lot of fans, if they were quite honest, deserve to be sort of a top 7 club. Are we going to go and challenge? Are we going to challenge for titles? Who knows? We've had a couple of stabs at it and just drifted off. But for this season, no, I think this is very much a building block. I think what we've got to be very aware of is, right, what's the next spot? Who do we go and get in the summer? It's sort of that time of the season where you see teams like Southampton, Villa, West Ham. Maybe not so much West Ham. I think West Ham have got a really good shot at going Champions League, as much as I hate to say it.
Mental.
But fair play to David Moyes, like, again, underrated British coach. But I think this is the part where you start planning for the next season, and I think this will be a real big challenge now for how they manage it. I don't think the club, with bringing in Johan Lang from FC Copenhagen, again, very forward-thinking. I hate saying data-driven club because the statistical side of it should just be the filtering process, not the actual bedrock to everything.
Agreed.
But I think there's going to be decisions to be made now over certain people with contracts, but over, are you going to sign to build a bench, or are you going to sign to replace a first-team player? So then that brings in really difficult questions. Is John McGinn a player able to take us into the top 6 on form? I absolutely believe so, but do we need someone in there to go and challenge him? Without a shadow of a doubt, Douglas Luiz, Tyrone Mings, maybe a couple of players that would be stretched into their 3rd season now. Do you fall into the Sheffield United problem where we didn't evolve, or do you go and kick on another level like Leicester? Leicester bringing in Yuri Tielemans, unbelievable footballer. James Justin, good identification, recruitment again. I think Leicester are a fantastic model for what we'd want to do. Not so much Premier League winners Leicester, but the evolution of Leicester.
I get it. That makes sense. And actually, when you just said that there, I'm like, that's totally, I could definitely see that. And like you said earlier, man, Villa are a huge English club. Like I've said this on here before, and I'm definitely guilty of it, but you fall into this trap of the big 6, right? The package you get from Sky, and all right, those 6 teams have probably been the ones that have been up there for the most part, but West Ham, Aston Villa, massive English clubs, and I think it's important. You said you keep going back to the history, but I think it's important because as a fan, it's the context and it's the journey and it's the ride of the ups and the downs, right? I mean, again, with Liverpool, maybe not this season, right? But last couple of years, the highest of the highs that I've never experienced before as a Liverpool fan, right? And before that, I've had, of course, I know we still won a Champions League and a couple of FA Cups and all that. Don't get me wrong, but you go through shit times and you go through good times, and it's part of the journey. But what about Jackie Grealish then? Because I was someone that up until this season, to be honest with you, I thought that he had loads of talent. I thought he was absolutely fantastic to watch, but I felt like he needed to impact games more consistently. Like, I wanted to see him take the game by the scruff of neck for 90 minutes and do it week in, week out. You know what I mean? And, like you said, with the data bit, it should just be the bedrock, but just bump those numbers up a little bit. A few more assists, a few more goals. I'm not saying that he needs to score 20 goals a season of that, but just a few goals and assists. And he's done every single bit of that this season. I mean, he's been phenomenal. And messaging you about it yesterday, there's genuine conversations over here, the way that it's talked about with all the English media, that it's almost like he might not get into the squad. And I'm like, he's probably your best player at the moment.
As an Ireland fan as well, to have him go all the way through the Irish youth ranks and then to choose England was a little bit of a heartbreak, and it's a bit of a black mark on him, but I completely understand it.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the players that I've seen live, and was fortunate having a season ticket between 2003 and 2010. I think it was 2009, just before I went to university. I watched a lot of good footballers play. I think in terms of watching someone live and to see a team react against a certain individual, I've not seen teams react to an individual player like Grealish the intensity to go and try and close him down.
Yeah.
For me, he's the best footballer I've seen live. Again, Villa tinted glasses on, I accept it, and that's fine.
Good player,
but again, I've not seen a player move with the ball the way he does, even from just a coaching perspective. If you watch how he moves with the ball, he leaves it there. He gives you half a sniff at it, and then it's gone. And he's not one-dimensional in how he does it, and it's not as what you'd sort of see from Cristiano Ronaldo in his heyday or anyone like that. It's not about scissors or anything like that. It's just sheer change of direction.
Technically,
as a football, technically he's fantastic. He looks after the ball so well, and it's not been. I can see what people can see about it. I think we had a similar thing back in the 2000s with Gareth Barry not getting into the England team. As Villa fans watching him every week, he stood out by an absolute country mile, and not even playing in his best positions, like his left back and then left midfield, and then he moved into centre midfield and started to get his chance. But I think it's one of them, when you see a player so often, it's hard to think, how isn't he there? And I think now with lockdown and people being able to probably have a bigger stake in watching Villa play, I think people can see some of the furore around him. And again, it's not been easy. He's had issues off the field. He's a bit of a boy from what you can see.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's important too. I think that's part of him.
Again, this is the quintessential thing that comes back to every single major tournament that England fail in. We don't have a maverick. We don't have someone who can do something different. We don't have anyone that can pick the lock. Always had really good players, always technically very decent, always physically strong and able to, but just that little bit of madness, that little bit of craziness and creativity, they've probably just missed out on, where like you might see that the Dutch probably have too much of that individual magic, and it all goes hayward in their team unit. The England team need a bit of that in there to go and be successful. They need someone who can come and deal with teams that play in a low block against them and just do something ridiculous. And I think if you put Harry Kane up front and you put Phil Foden, Jack Grealish and Raheem Sterling behind him, I don't think that there's many front fours that would be better than that. And again, I watch an envy as an Ireland fan to an England team, like I'm sure you've done with the Scottish team.
Yes.
The amount of talent they've got is unbelievable. For him not to be, it's not just a conversation, it should be of him getting in the squad to go to the Euros. It should be the conversation of, where do you put Sterling and Foden around him? Does Foden go in as a 10? Is Jack in at the 10? Does it let them sweep around and flip around? But it shouldn't be a question of if he's in the squad. It should be, where in the 11 are you placing him to get his best football?
Agreed, man. It's not even a debate for me. And don't get me wrong, right? The type of player he is, and maybe of no fault of his own, he is the type of player that could go to a major tournament and not do anything. Like Harry Kane's always going to score. Raheem Sterling's always going to be that on the wing, twisting and turning people. And the way that Grealish plays is, it's the downside of those players is that sometimes they can go missing, right? He's showing that he knows how to get himself in the game and take it for the scruff of the net with Villa. But like, I agree with you. It's not, is he even in the team? It's like, where do you play? And like, who are you potentially even dropping to have him in there? Because he has to go. He has to go and he has to start. If they don't, I think they take him, but I don't think he starts every game or starts all the time, which would be bizarre.
Yeah. And it's been a weird relationship with him and Southgate.
It has.
Again, that goes back to sort of the relationship Villa fans had with England managers around Gareth Barry and things like that.
Yeah.
Different under O'Neill, when we had Milner down and Young. Gabby was in there as well, bless him.
Gabby Bonham.
But it's an interesting relationship Southgate's got with Grealish. It's a case of, does he trust him to take him away to a major tournament and rely on him to do that, given off the field stuff? But again, you need a madman in there. You need that maverick. And England have got to a point now that they're starting to, they've really done well, bringing through very, very good technical footballers. Again, Phil Foden's another one. I think he'll be outrageous. Your Rashfords of the world, very efficient at what he does. England have got a really good pool of players again, but I think even if you listen to a couple of his friends from around the area talk, James Maddison, Ross Barkley, from bits and pieces of interviews, they see Grealish as one of the more talented players. So I think the consensus was Ross Barkley was the most talented out of all of them. From what I remember of an interview, Jack's just a different level, off the cuff, and like you said, he starts to put goals and assists to it. I don't think there's anyone even close to him. It's all the talk of how many fouls is he going to get to, how many times is he going to be involved with a goal today, which is a big step up sort of thing. It's a very big conversation changer.
No, it is, man. He's impressed me. We'll finish off in Villa with this. Like, is there an acceptance from you and Villa fans that at some point, if he carries on like this, he goes?
There's less of an inevitability to that than John Terry leaving.
Right.
He just signed a 5-year deal in the summer.
Yep.
Obviously, again, statement of intent from the ownership in keeping their best players. Something, again, going back to speaking about Wes Edens and the Bucks, is something that, as a franchise or club owner, is very aware of keeping your best young talent. And that's a necessity to build on. My question, and I've said this to a couple of people, in England, who would he go to that's worthwhile going to at the moment? You might look at Man City. Is he going to play every week? Liverpool, does he fit the style? Probably not as direct as what Liverpool would like.
Agreed.
If you look at Salah and Mane.
Agreed.
And then Man United have got 100 million players for the same position, just no defenders.
Yep.
And then I honestly think, and this is hand on heart, honestly, I think if and when Barca and Real get to sort of their financial plump and get back on their feet after COVID, I can genuinely see him being in there.
I
have no doubt about that, and I'll possibly get slated for it, but he's just that good. So the question is, where's worthwhile going to is the first question, and then who's got the financial prowess to go and do it, because his price tag goes up every single game.
Yeah.
If United were looking at Jadon Sancho for 120 million, and all things considered, you're in a 3-team league in Germany now. It's great that he's doing it, but look what he's got around him as well. Look what Jack Grealish is doing in the Premier League with a very talented bunch of players, but maybe not Dortmund's level of Champions League level players. But if you're going to pay 120 million for Sancho, then again, throw the bias claim at me all you want. It's a case of Jack's that, if not more, for what he can do.
Absolutely, man. Go on.
No, that was my point. Yeah. He's unbelievable.
I mean, you know, COVID might change it for a bit and the prices might come down, but if you're talking, you know, normal times and his price tag, it's easily 100 million and probably a little bit more. So,
well, I think that's the third factor then involved, is because of COVID, and again because of the owners we've got no need to sell anybody. We're getting market value, or they're going nowhere. He's got a 5-year deal. He's on a lot of money. He's probably worth more than that money we give him for the club. Oh, yeah. So again, we've got no vested interest to even think about selling unless it's going to be ridiculous sums. I don't think it's a starter question until he turns around and says, all right, I've had enough.
Yeah, and I think that from the sound of things, from everything you've said so far, chatting here, and from what I've seen from the outside looking in from Villa and everything, you know, we've said about Dean Smith and that and the club, it seems like they would probably, you know, of course, when they have that meeting, they're going to try and keep him. Of course they are. But I think that it sounds like they would accept it and understand and be appreciative of what he's done. And as long as the right deal came along for the club, then he would get to probably, you know, go Barca or Madrid, wherever it is. So yeah, you guys are just, it's a good time. It's a good time for you. I think you're enjoying it, not just this season. I think that I can see Villa sustaining, like you say, top 7 for sure. I can see that happening, man. Absolutely. And you mentioned Ross Barkley, who didn't even talk on either on that part of the chat. Great signing, in my opinion, just playing to his strengths, playing him where he's really good. like not rocket science, and he's been huge for you. Been absolutely huge.
Yeah, I think he's starting to really come into his own before the Brighton game where he got his hamstring injury and he's out for 6 weeks, and then we obviously had our COVID outbreak, and so it was just train recovery for the first team, and he didn't get to train on top of having a hamstring issue. I spoke to my brother when we first signed him. I think the one thing Ross Barkley needs is a good coach next to him who just puts his arm around him and looks after him, and then a team that plays into him. I think at the moment, especially the last few games, he looks like he's searching for a former self. He looks like he's trying to remember how to be Ross Barkley.
Right, okay.
I think once he gets that little bit of confidence, I think there's another level or two. There's a big debate in Villa circles. Is he worth the reported 40 million?
Yeah, it's a lot.
I think given the form in the last 5 games, it would be very difficult to justify, but I can see the value in Ross Barkley, again, with a good coach like Dean Smith and a good team around him. I think Ross Barkley could be definitely a player we should be looking for that. And I think going back to the owners once more and going back to the club where it is at the moment, it's a case of the value of the player. Do they think they can get more value out of Ross Barkley once they've paid out the money for him? Yes. And I think that's definitely going to be a case. I think, again, Dean Smith, with the setup at Brentford and understanding what value is and where value is in the transfer market and around adding value to players and how important it is, it wouldn't be an investment to make lightly, but I think there's a lot more that could still come from a Ross Barkley. He's definitely, on his days, definitely a Champions League level player.